and welcome to the final Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. We are now 200 plus Rick and Bubba Universities in, and Bubba, today will be the final one.
Rick, we believe up to this point we have 218. Now, that number has been somewhat disputed by texters, saying there was more like 223, but I think you get the point. We have about 4 to 5 years of podcasts we've been doing, and thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And so what we want to do in this last one is just hear from you. What are some things over the last 31 years you were looking for answers on, you'd like to get some behind-the-scenes on? And we have great ones. And, Bubba, right out of the gate, here's number one from Paige. Paige says, how did Bubba get his name? How and when did he go from Bill Bussey to Bill Bubba Bussey? And if you go back to the old archives, I'm calling you Bill Bussey more than I'm calling you Bubba, because the Bubba was not how I met you. You were not Bubba when I met you.
Right. Well, I wasn't Bubba when you met me.
Yeah, right.
And Rick actually gave me that name by saying I sounded like somebody's Uncle Bubba, which to me, being a Bubba meant you sounded country, which clearly I did not.
Right.
No, so
not at all.
That could have been a misname, but it stuck. And in show business, as they say, long as you're calling me, I don't care what you call me.
That's true. Yeah, Bubba was engineer and was coming in as a character, and so I said just what he said. You sound like everybody's Uncle Bubba, and I said, how about here's Bill Bubba Bussey, the engineer, and we were off and running, and it also made it real easy when we decided to be a two-man show in '94. Rick and Bubba was really simple.
Yeah, it flowed pretty easy. There was a few Bubbas out there already.
Easy to spell.
But,
so that's where it came from. Yeah,
went to good.
That's where it came from. Bubba, what do you got over there?
Let's see. My question is, how did Rick and Bubba start doing baby predictions? Who said, I think we can predict this? Where did the questions for the predictions come from? I'm sure the origin has been discussed before, but I missed it. Thanks for all the laughs, Andrea. Andrea, that, it started because at the time we were all going through that time of life where everybody was having babies.
Right.
And, we had kind of noticed a couple of trends on things, and then we started asking people if they were noticing these trends, and it kind of turned and evolved into a baby prediction. And at one point when we first did it, I was actually stopped by an OBGYN doctor in the hospital and said, I want you to know y'all are on to something with this.
Yeah.
And he went into a much more detailed explanation.
Yes, he did.
But the pH balance stuff,
here we go.
The hair on your legs, if the baby has, if it's a little boy, it has more testosterone, and the placenta is supposed to isolate the baby from the mother as much as possible, but it's not 100%.
Right.
So, a baby boy would cause things in the mom. You would see physical changes dealing with testosterone, like hair growing more.
Right.
Things like that. There also was some statistical data on dads and what they were doing to produce this and that. And it just kind of evolved, and we started getting them dead on, and we knew we had something.
Well, and one of the things that it was science, and, anytime we had an opportunity to make fun of other shows and goofy things they did. And so other shows are doing the Chinese calendar or something, Chinese this, and, all these babies, and, how you carrying the baby. And so we just said, let's go to science. And so we looked at things that were scientific in nature, to Bubba's point, and really everything we asked, there is some science that backs that. And if you really want to hear an uncomfortable show, ask people, when people called and asked what they could do to improve their chances of a particular gender.
Yeah, there were some things you could even do to try to point you in that direction. Not 100%,
no,
but to change the odds a little bit, and we kind of picked up on a little bit of that too. So we really couldn't talk about that on the air because it was some detailed information, but we did email it out a few times.
Yeah, well,
now if you need that information, Speedy has all of it. So that's
sure
Speedy at rickandbubba.com.
Well, I will tell some of you out there, Sherry wanted so bad for us to have a little girl together, and on the last child that we had together, and it did not work. But I will tell you this: I've always loved chocolate syrup. So who cares?
Sure.
So who cares? All right. So the next one, Rick and Bubba, y'all have mentioned having stalkers. Could you elaborate on that? Did you ever have anybody that got put in jail or crossed any lines like that? This is from Charles.
We've had. some of it I don't know that we can talk about yet. Right. There's always time issues there, and what we don't want to do is have the last week of the show and have lawsuits to deal with.
Sure.
But several of them have had to go and stay in the big Gray Bar Motel.
Yes.
We had one. The last one we had at the last studio was coming around painting the windows.
Correct.
And was almost, Rick, elf-like, being able to avoid the police.
Yeah, strange.
But they finally got her and hauled her off in a hog tie format.
Right. Which really disrupted lunch.
So I mean, there's stalkers that are good stalkers, and there's bad stalkers. And the ones that were very energetic about the show, we realized early to put them to work.
Absolutely.
And that usually kind of curbed their enthusiasm. Not to quote a great sitcom, but it did kind of curb their enthusiasm to if you put a stalker to work. They sometimes, I guess, they want access.
Yeah, they do.
And you give them all the access they want, they will eventually get bored and go do something.
100%, that's true, and we've seen that. And plus, that they at first they want to do it solely on access. You don't have to pay them.
Right.
Yeah. So, have you got the next one about? Is this the Rushmore?
Yeah. And this will take just a little bit of time here. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of radio personality? So that would be, 4 to 5 people you put up there. I'll just tell you, and I want to thank these people. And this is probably a good place to do it. And this is not the national picture as much as people that influenced me personally. One of the first people I ever heard on the radio, his name was Marvelous Marvin McCullough.
There he is.
And me and my dad used to listen to him driving around in his Ford Maverick, which did not have power windows, power steering, or air conditioning, because that's what men did back then.
Right.
And we would hear all the antics that he had got into and whatever. And I just thought it was great. I mean, every time I got in the car, I wanted to hear what he was doing. And I actually got to meet him years after that. He had a very colorful radio career, and if you read about him online, very colorful off the air also.
Oh, really? Okay.
Another duo that I listened to growing up that was very influential was Rick Sisk and Dennis Deason at Q104. Rick and Dennis. And you know what? Believe it or not, I have never met either one of those guys. And crossed paths with them, have common friends. Never have met them, but they were very influential to me, and they were on Q104, the station that we started on.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. I have had a phone conversation with Dennis Deason, but I don't think I've ever met Rick.
And, he's, like I said, we've crossed paths, a lot of common friends. Yeah. Never have met him, and hopefully I will one of these days. Another one for me, Rick, is Dave Donnell. Now he did the morning show.
Now, he paid your house note once, didn't he?
Well, they had that contest, which I thought was hilarious. He was the morning guy on Win Radio here in Birmingham. It was the urban station, which I loved.
Oh yeah,
and I just I love listening to him. I was flipping back and forth between him and Rick and Dennis and Mark and Brian all the time, and actually met Dave Donnell. He worked at our company here at our flagship. Worked in sales.
How about
that?
I
got to meet him many, many years ago, and I told him what an influence he had been. I think he was a little shocked by that.
Sure.
But,
I bet he was.
He influenced a lot more people than he knew. Mark and Brian, they were on 94.5, another station that we were on later. They were the absolute kings of chaos, I love listening to them. They influenced us as far as what we wanted to do.
Yep.
Then we got to meet them later on at KLOS in Los Angeles. They answered questions for us about things we had heard on the air about them and rumors and all this, and it was a great trip. I actually got on the air with them when we were there, and they invited us out to the studio. And we went out there, and they were shooting basketball in the back.
Well,
and it was just a great trip.
Oh, yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Absolutely.
That may have been one of the
fantastic.
high watermarks of all time for me.
Yeah, that picture became part of the ongoing gag on the show of us trying to get a good contract when we would take the picture and we'd hold it and we'd put our hands on it and say,
Come money, come. Come money, come.
Yes, because they had a huge deal to go to Los Angeles.
Yes, they did. Rick, I'll tell you some other guys that that influenced us that we got to work with. And they were very kind to us, went out of their way to answer questions for us and really help to advise us on some things. Paul Feinbaum was one of them. We worked together, and Paul was always very accommodating. We had a funny relationship with Paul. Still stay in touch with him today. Sean Hannity, who invited us up to be on Fox News several times.
Yes.
They actually gave us a microphone and a cameraman. We went out to cover a parade. I thought, Rick, that's where we were about to get our big break.
Didn't you feel like that was it?
But apparently it was not everything they thought it was going to be.
I thought Fox at that day, I remember thinking, Bubba, are you good with us moving to New York? Because we're going to be asked.
Yes. Yeah.
I thought that we had solidified our place on Fox News right then.
I thought this is it. I was already thinking how we would write it up in the book.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And it didn't pan out.
Apparently
Exactly
we weren't good enough.
No, not there. Neil Bortz, that did the talk show on WSB in Atlanta, was very nice to us. He had us on his show.
Yep.
And we've had him on our show, and he's very funny. He when we were looking at going to WZZK Radio, which they were owned by Cox at the time, Cox Broadcasting, and we asked to meet with him because he worked for Cox.
That's right.
And we went to Atlanta and sit down with him in the conference room. I'll never forget the advice. He said, look, these guys, and I'll paraphrase this.
I was about to say, I hope you're going to paraphrase this.
He said, these guys are as big a losers as all the rest of them, but not quite as bad in general terms. Right. So that was very important for us to take that step and go over to Cox Radio. Rick, Herb Winches, when I was very young,
you're putting Herb on this?
Herb let me, and when him and Ben Cook were doing a sports show in the afternoon, they were on, I believe it was WAPI at the time.
ERC,
it may have been ERC, but they had a studio over in Irondale in Birmingham. It was very close to Long's Electronics, and Herb let me come over several times and just watch them. And I learned a lot about how they were doing, how they were doing their phone calls, and they were very nice. Of course, I see Herb a lot now at the lake.
Yes.
He's got two restaurants there now that are doing really good. Rick, and two, when it comes to just people you idolize, you can't jump over Maha Rushdie.
No, Rush Limbaugh.
He saved AM radio.
He's the center of the Mount Rushmore of radio.
Well, he was, we never tried to copy him. We did some political conversation, of course, on the show, but it was more of things we believed in. But Rush brought a comedy to what had been a very bone-dry topic in radio. Single-handedly saved AM radio. Made talk radio what it was today. Before him, there was, who was the guy on ABC at night? Do you remember who I'm talking about?
Yes.
He was real dry. And it was called
TalkNet. Bruce Williams.
Yeah. Bruce, great broadcaster, but very dry.
This is TalkNet.
Bruce Williams, and this is TalkNet.
Your dreams, your hopes, See, remember that?
When Rush brought the comedy to it, that's what I was so, I'll never forget. I was at a station, and we were always looking for programming, and I'll never forget Mark Norman told me this at church one Sunday. He said, have you heard Rush Limbaugh? And I said, no, I don't know who you're talking about. He said, no. He said, you don't understand. Do not do anything else till you hear what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he told me the station it was on, and I was going to be in Birmingham the next day, and I tuned it in. And the first thing I heard, and we've talked about this before, was him doing a Barney Franks update.
Oh, yes.
And
how hard you laugh at that?
Rick, I had to pull off the road. I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, we got to get this guy. And I immediately started trying to call to get him on the station we were on. And somebody had already got the clearance rights in our market. So, but he was kind of the center of the world where that went. And then he was on the air while we were on the air. But we always enjoyed. At the same time, but not the same day part. So, we got to hear him, but he was always extremely entertaining. Never got to meet him. I hate that.
We tried so hard.
That's one of the great misses I put career-wise. We did meet his manager when we were in New York, in his studio, by the way.
Yep.
And we had brought up to him that we would love to co-host. Or fill in, be a fill-in host.
Boy, the look on his face.
And that got, Rick, that would be nowhere. As Greg would say. We got nothing.
No.
About as far as the Fox thing did. And but I love listening to him, and other people like Paul Harvey and all those people we heard growing up. There's so many great legends in radio, and radio's such a great medium.
Oh yeah.
Those guys absolutely poured into me, not knowing they were doing it.
Sure.
And one more I've got to mention. We were on a show in Atlanta. Gosh, help me, Rick.
Rhubarb Jones?
Rhubarb Jones,
yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Rhubarb, who, God rest his soul, he's passed on now, but he was a lot of fun, and he always wore jerseys and was a cut-up, and getting to meet him and be on his show and him promoting our book event in Atlanta it was off the charts for me. And,
highlight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely a highlight. So everybody you mentioned, I would say totally agree. I would add for me personally, just influence, Gary Lee Love.
Yeah,
and Coyote Calhoun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I missed them, but I agree 100%.
Just add to that list, and then I'll take the whole list and add them. We'll come back. More of Rick and Bubba University, letters from the audience right after this. So let's talk about buyraycon.com/RickBubbaPod, up to 25% off site-wide. Now, these everyday earbuds are about half the price of the other earbuds that are in the same premium audio space, about half the price. And now here we are. Now get it, because you're listening to Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, 25% off site-wide by going to buyraycon.com/RickBubbaPod. Great Christmas gifts, multi-point connectivity now. They've added that. That means you can, have two devices going at the same time. 32-hour battery life. You also have the sound profiles that have always been there. You have the isolation mode if you want to not be aware of what's going on around. You have your own time, or you can have the awareness mode. They've got great colors. At this price, you could just stuff stockings everywhere. So now go to buyraycon.com/RickBubbaPod, buyraycon.com/RickBubbaPod, 25% off site-wide.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
Bubba, it is continuing our version.
Can we go back to Gary Lee Love?
Yeah, you talking about Gary Love in the nighttime on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, letters from the audience?
He was on Q104, the station we started on.
Yeah.
Did the nights.
Yep.
And he was such a big, colorful personality.
Oh, I loved him.
And I told you one time he came to our high school.
Yeah.
And he'd been at the pep rally or something. He was signing some autographs, but he had to go. And I didn't quite get to him to get the autograph.
Bummer.
And that haunted me. You know how I always wanted to stay and sign everything for everybody, because that haunted me like a ghost, that I didn't get that autograph. I think I was next in line when he had to leave. But gosh, what a big, colorful personality that he was.
Oh, he was working nights on the FM station that we love, Gary Lee Love in the nighttime. And he was coming to our local skating rink, and I've told you this before too. We've talked about this. And I remember thinking to myself, because in radio you can get burned. You can think somebody's really cool, and then you see them. And I was concerned about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm in Sunshine Skate Center, and he comes in. Shirt 2-3 buttons down, just a blazing gold chain on. And you remember the Chuck Foreman sunglasses?
Yes, I love those with it that faded off from heavy to almost clear.
Clear. He had those on.
I wish I had glasses like that today.
He had long hair and a beard, and he came in, put one hand on the DJ booth, and just pushed himself over on and stood there behind it and said he was ready to spin. And I thought to myself, that right there, I have to do that. I have to do that. So, all those go on our Mount Rushmore. And I know that's too big for the mountain. But that's
we've
everybody.
Carved up a whole valley there. But those were some great memories. Let's see, Rick. This here, I haven't.
Do you want this one with it being scared for our lives? Is that the one you're talking about?
Is this about the tornado?
Yeah,
from,
somebody says,
Aiden K?
All the severe weather we've covered and all the things we've done, have we ever feared for our own life because of the weather that was coming? And then advice, if I'm looking to be the GOAT of meteorology. That's funny.
If you're going to be the GOAT of meteorology, you got to go to the GOAT, and that's James Spann.
That's James Spann.
And you need to learn every crossroads, every oak tree, and every ditch that crosses every road in the area you cover that you can name by basically looking at a radar.
Absolutely.
And I will say this: I don't think I'm trying to think. There was one time we got caught out in a real bad thunderstorm, and we were in the station van.
Oh no! Yeah.
And I had the storm spotting class and all that.
Of course, you had.
Sure
you had.
And I mean, it is raining to the point I think the windshield is going to cave in.
I remember this, yeah.
And the wind is rocking the van. We can't see to drive. We pull off on the side of the road. And I remember telling you, I said, Rick, as long as it doesn't hail, we'll be okay. And I didn't no more get that out of my mouth to the rocks started hitting the van.
Unbelievable.
And, I was thinking, because you had warned us earlier in our career to get under a raven if we needed to.
Couldn't say ravine.
And I thought, we need to get out here and find a raven to get under.
Right.
But it was raining so hard, I was almost like, I think I'm going to take my chances in the van.
Yeah.
Because, it was coming a frog string.
When you said we're okay as long as it doesn't start hailing, and it started hailing.
Yeah, it was immediate, too. Yeah, and that was the only time I thought, well, this is not going to go well. No. It's just not. It's not going to end well, and we're just going to get caught up, and we're going to be like Dorothy and go flying in this van somewhere.
So this one also, a listener says, are there any bits that y'all recorded that y'all decided you couldn't play on the best ofs because of possibly getting into trouble?
Well, if we had those, we couldn't tell you about them.
Well, probably, yeah. I can think of some that we let time pass. Willie and Wanda, we let time pass on it.
Yeah, we had to.
And then, did we ever put on a CD? Careful, Rick. Did we ever put on the CD I know we've told the story about trying to help our boss get. Did it ever make a CD? And the ice, the hammer.
Yeah, when we slung his vehicle around.
Yeah, and I think we had to be a little cautious on that. And then sometimes. There's really nothing worse, and this happens on the best ofs now, where things will come up on the best ofs that like those relationships aren't really. It's not good, Right now, things get dated and things get said, and you're like, oh wow, didn't know that was on that bit. When you bring it, I know you're writing stuff down right now, but so yeah, that does happen from time to time, but we try not to get in that situation. I guess that question just can't be answered. To your point,
you know what? We'll probably just let that one go.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
I think that's probably best.
You ever been riding along and hear one? Also, oh wow, forgot about that.
Now we've had we had a story we told,
right?
Which I thought we were going to be fired over early on.
Yep.
It never played on the air during the morning show. But we were out doing a remote, and I thought this is where the show started and ended. And I thought, well,
no question.
I remember thinking I can tell people why we got fired. And
just when we thought we were going to be hired by Fox News, we were certain about this was the end of the show, and we were only probably a year in.
Yeah, it was early on, and we've talked about this before, and we'll give you the high points or low points. But we were at the Gadsden Mall doing a remote.
Oh boy,
and we were at a place that featured pitas.
Yep.
And
yeah. Why don't you just
I invited all the people out to lunch that enjoyed that particular meal.
Yep.
By inviting all the pita eaters to come to lunch.
Right.
But I got a little tongue-tied.
Yeah.
And I didn't say it just exactly right.
Yep.
And then realizing what you said,
right?
We got what I call my tickle box turned over.
Yep.
And I could not get it back together.
No.
And we tried, and we just kept not being able to do a break.
Right.
And Amy was working at the studio at that time, and she would try to pitch to us, and all you would hear was.
And that was us laughing. We couldn't pull it together.
Yeah, I
couldn't do it.
I mean, every time we think we had it together, and we'd start to go live again, and then we would lose it.
Yeah, and there's so many words that are close to PETA,
yeah,
and that shouldn't be associated with eater.
And then we finally got it back together, and then you had to say,
Well, I find myself anticipating who's going to take us up on the lunch special, and I shouldn't have said that.
And
that was a mistake.
And it was over again.
That was a mistake.
And finally, we just packed up. We told the business owner, "Thank you.
Yep.
We're sorry about that."
Yep.
And I figured we'd go back to clean our desk out. And
yep, that was
it was not good.
Yep, there almost was no 31-year anniversary after that one.
No, it was almost the 1 year special.
We'll come back.
That was that.
That was that. We'll take more letters from the audience when Rick and Bubba University. The podcast continues right after this. Americans, you're tired of it, aren't you? You're frustrated by the, you got all this going on and on and on. You're tired of putting money with companies that do not, they not only don't stand for your foundational morals or your political views, they stand against it. Well, and you think, well, there's nothing I can do. Well, when it comes to wireless service, there is something you can do. There's companies like Patriot Mobile that still believe in America, the Constitution. We're proud to partner with Patriot Mobile. They've been good to us through this whole run. They're on the front lines fighting for the First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life. They consider the military, our first responders, the heroes that they are. They take a stand for conservative causes. Now, you're not going to lose quality. We're not trying to guilt you into this, okay? If you switch to Patriot Mobile, you get the same nationwide coverage as the big providers because Patriot Mobile operates on all three major networks, plus they back their service and their coverage with a guarantee, okay? You're going to have a U.S.-based customer service team. There's a breath of fresh air. And how about this? You can keep the phone you have now. You can keep the number you have now, or you can upgrade. It's up to you. So you don't have to be throwing money at these other companies. Go to patriotmobile.com/RickBubba, or you can call them 972-PATRIOT. Right now, get a free month when you use our promo code RickBubba. That's patriotmobile.com/RickBubba, or call 972-PATRIOT. Letters from the audience. Bubba, we continue as we wrap up the final Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.
Rick, there's some debate about how many we've actually had. We heard 218. This would be 29. How many, Adler?
All right, Adler, what do you think?
Go ahead, just talk.
I think I messed up the playlist. So I was looking at total videos in the playlist, and that's why I said 218 earlier. So I need to go back and make sure I've added all these because the last one was 222, so that would make this 223.
Okay,
so
there
this
is
wrong. The texter was actually right about that.
Because I said one of the places out there, I guess where you load these things or where they end up had it at 223.
Yeah, I was just looking at total videos in this playlist, and I think somewhere along the way I forgot one or two in the playlist. My bad.
That's okay. All right, so Bubba, here's one that's been asked often. I remember riding to school with my mom in the mornings and hoped that drive-through password would come on before we got to school. Why did the show quit playing this game, and why can't you play it here at the end? Well, you can blame the FCC for this. This is not our fault.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a legal gray area with some of the rule changes.
Sure.
That we were not allowed to put people on the air without their prior knowledge that they were on the air.
Correct.
So you heard us for many years when we would call somebody, we'd say, "Hey, you're live with the Rick and Bubba Show." Now sometimes we said it a little fast, a little low,
yeah,
because it would ruin a bit.
We left Don and Mike off our Mount Rushmore.
Well, that's true.
But go ahead.
And I'm kind of ashamed to say that, but wow, they were funny.
Yeah.
And we actually heard them do that and thought, hey, that's a good way to get around it. But the FCC changed some of those rules, so we had to be a little more careful with it. Now, there's probably a debate about if you're actually talking to someone and they're identified or they're just background noise.
Okay.
But since they were answering questions from the callers, I'd love drive-through password, and the concept was the people who were ordering had to get the phone so we could hear them and the people that they were talking to.
Right.
And we would tell them a word or phrase, and they would try to get the person working at the drive-thru to say it without telling them they were on the Rick and Bubba Show.
Right.
So they would come up with elaborate questions to ask them, like, well, help me with this before I order it, so-and-so.
Right.
And there was a lot of comedy in that because the drive-thru people really didn't want to fool with that.
Right.
But it was funny.
Yeah, and you see where it runs aground. The whole thing that made it funny was the person on the speaker didn't know this person was on the radio.
Right.
Well, if you have to tell the person on the speaker that they're on the radio too, it kills the whole gag.
Yeah,
I mean it's over.
You lose the comedy of it, so it was hard to do. And there were many funny episodes of Drive-Thru
Oh
Password.
my goodness!
I will say one that I remember especially And it was during one of the wars we were in the Middle East where we were dealing with Iran and Iraq. And
I forgot about this.
The word that we gave her was Iraq.
Right.
Thinking it was the country and that it was in the headlines, that would be easy to remember. And that she would go into, hey, this country, who's that? What's that country, that has the dictator?
We all thought
we're
that,
at war with.
Yeah.
And she thought we were talking about a rock, R-O-C-K, like would be on the ground.
Yeah, or throw it, yeah.
So she starts trying to get this person to say what that stone was that was on the ground.
Right.
And we were all laughing and crying. I couldn't believe that she thought it was that to begin with. So that one really had double the humor because it was she didn't understand us, and then she was trying to get the wrong word to be said by the attendant, but it was a word that sounded very close.
Well, what I also loved about it is when we would lock in and the person taking the drive-through, which is they were actually in the right, but we were going for the laugh.
Right.
And they would say, I don't have time for this. Could you please just order? And we go, you tell them you will not be ordering until they answer this question.
Right. I'm sitting right here.
And we would just get people dug in.
Yes.
And so anyway, but that's why we don't play it anymore, because it kind of kills the bit. If everybody knows they're on the radio, now it really didn't work.
One of the funniest video clips that I have ever seen,
Yep.
second to none, is JT shooting the deer.
Yes.
And we thought it was funny how when these hunting shows would talk to a hunter in the shooting stand, how they would talk quiet.
Oh, yeah.
And how after they got a deer, they would tell you how it came about.
Oh, yeah.
And I was not actually in on the ground floor of this. You were.
Yep.
I knew that y'all were setting up JT for a prank, and JT had a lot of pranks.
Yes.
That y'all had a fake deer, and that you were going to put it in the middle of a field.
Yep.
And a guy was hiding safely behind the hill.
That's important.
With a rope. And after JT shot at it 2 or 3 times, they were going to pull it over like he got it. And there was a cameraman in the stand talking to JT while this was going on.
Right, yeah.
And the funniest part was after he shoots, obviously, a fake deer.
Oh, yeah.
They pull it over. I mean, Rick, he shot at it 3 or 4 times. Most deer would have took out. He just stood there.
Yeah, right.
And it fell like a tree going down, okay? I mean, it was like timber. And then the cameraman in the shooting house is talking to JT, and JT starts telling him how it came out and it worked its way around the edge of the woods.
This is a fake deer.
Totally made up story that JT was telling, so it would sound good on the video.
Yeah.
And then when he went out to see the deer he had shot and saw that it had a metal bottom on it, the look on his face.
Oh, my gosh.
JT was just gold in so many ways. If we fumbled something over the years, it was letting him get off to do his own radio career instead of being a moose for us.
I know.
You know?
Yeah, and so they were asking about the prep behind it in the email. How did y'all come about this? How long did it take to prep? Honestly, we weren't part of that at all. All we knew is that it was going to happen. Actually, where we were hunting that time, they got with the state. The state provided the fake deer because it was how they caught poachers, and it was an elaborate thing set up that all we really had to do was to convince JT to go back out because we didn't get the deer. We didn't play any role in all that. They were actually people that just loved the show that wanted to do it, and we said JT's the perfect guy. So the only prep we really had was making sure JT went out, making sure he had the green light to shoot, and then waiting on the gold that came after it.
All you had to do was set the situation up. JT would make it funny. Not meaning to.
No.
That was what was so funny about it.
So another letter here says, I've looked in the Rick and Bubba dictionary, and I can't find this. What is the meaning behind the Harry Murdahl character that you called the person who answered the phones during the pandemic? And what is the story behind Somebody Help Daddy T-shirts? The second one is going to make some sense. The Harry Murdahl one, I know that y'all want me to have more details about this. That's Gerald Cates, Greg's friend that is just a bizarre human being. And so Gerald Cates, many times, if somebody, he would love to walk up to people. And, Bubba, this is your kind of humor that you love.
Oh, Gerald's very funny.
And somebody will say something like, hey, can y'all tell me where such and such is? He said, well, now, Harry Murdahl, and he just threw it in.
He just starts quoting him.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing Harry Murdahl said, and so it's just this name that Gerald Cates came up with that he would use as a fake person anytime he wanted to say, well, somebody said it was okay. Well, I talked to Harry Murdahl, and he said we can do this right here, no problem. I've got his permission. and so when we were pretending to have a call screener during the pandemic, we just started throwing Harry Murdahl in there as the call screener, but it really wasn't anyone. It's a fake character.
It's totally made up.
And the Somebody Help Daddy T-shirt, that's simple. That's from a story when I was at Lake Guntersville with my wife and my in-laws, and I made the stupid decision in my 40s to try to water ski again at about 305 pounds, and realized that it was different at that age and that weight. And I got to the boat to try to get in because the motor actually started spewing oil trying to pull me up. And when I got to the boat, I realized I couldn't get back in. And so everybody's starting to laugh. And finally, I just have to scream out, hey, somebody help Daddy. I mean, I need help. I can't get in the boat. And I think that's out on the Best Of CD, but that's where that came from. So, and you can use that in any situation, when you need your family to give you some help. So,
how are we on time here? Because this one was a little bit longer.
All right, so let's take the break right here, and then we'll come back when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues right after this. Okay, so college is a major investment. Really, really important that we do our homework. Now, what you don't want to do is spend a ton of money, send your kid off to some college that indoctrinates them into being some woke lib or something like that, or to abandon the faith. So why don't you use this guide? It's free to use, by the way. It's called ChristianCollegeGuide.com. Now, this is an online directory of over 250 Christian colleges. It's a one-stop shop. Like any other college guide, you can view all the basics there. Their acceptance rates, tuition costs, academic majors, all that's there. But what makes ChristianCollege.com special, you can also use this guide to learn about the school's faith tradition, its campus policies, its spiritual life, its theology, all the information that shows the college's true character. You can find over 150 questions for every school profiled, making this the definitive guide to Christian higher education. Just because somebody says Christian, you need to check it out. And it's absolutely free to the public. That's right, free. Just go to ChristianCollege.com to create a user profile and get started today. That's ChristianCollegeGuide.com.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
So, Bubba, we're back on letters from the audience. You said you have one that might be a little lengthy.
Well, this one is. It says, how are we on time here, Rick?
We got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
A little less than 10.
In the history of the show, what would you guys say is the funniest Bank 9 moment? Or the one that got you laughing the most? Maybe you could do some kind of Bank 9 playoff. Second question, tied into this. Or three. There's actually three on this.
Okay, oh, wow.
Do you want to take them one at a time?
Yeah,
get them all on the table and work them in?
Let's do that one. I'm going to have a real hard time being against the grape lady who tried to stomp the grapes.
Yes, and
fell and starts groaning, and she's on TV and she's telling them, they need to cut. And
right.
Oh my.
That's good.
That's going to sit up in my one slot probably.
That's pretty good. Greg, when he first started on the show and was not guarding his responses, he made several of those.
Yes,
it was pretty good about we don't have the tools to pull this off.
Sure, that's right.
I will say this. I think, didn't we refer to his name as Hank?
Yes.
He was the older gentleman that they had a sewer problem in the yard, and he was on TV ranting and raving about it. And we got several really good drops from that.
This one?
My theory is from this putrid smell, people that are overweight, wanting to lose weight, come down here, you won't eat for a week.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
I didn't see the news story he was on. I remember us playing it, but I don't remember. But in my mind, he will always look like Old Blue off of what was the name of that movie?
Yes, I agree. A Bachelor Party?
No.
What's it called? Oh, Old School.
Old School.
Yeah, Old School, yeah.
He sounds like Old Blue to me. we have several clips from him, Rick, and those, I don't know why, but they are just funny to me.
Yeah, this one.
The smell is so bad it'd make a man want to go back to his ex-wife.
I mean, who says that?
Yeah,
who says that?
That's hard to beat. It really is. And then I'm trying to think if there was another one. I like the playing the one about this is a cornhole tournament.
Yes,
that woman
and she's mad because they're fighting.
Yeah.
She's going to shut it down.
She's going to shut it down. So those are all good. Yeah.
That's good, too. Of the guests and interviews you've had on the show, who was the one that you were the most excited about? Was there one that you were starstruck over? There's been a lot of them that I was glad we were going to have on the show. Now, you may laugh at some of them, but the actress that played Shirley Partridge, I thought was a lot of fun.
Okay.
What was her name? Gosh, I can't remember it now.
Shirley.
Help us, Adler.
Shirley.
This is why we need to end up.
Right.
Shirley Renfrew?
No.
Played Mrs. Partridge.
Because I love the Partridge Family growing
Shirley
up.
Jones?
Shirley Jones.
There it is.
Thank
you, buddy.
Golly.
Thank you, buddy. Shirley Jones. That was good. What about Linda Evans?
Linda Evans, who I was a fan of, and Linda appreciated that.
She did,
and I appreciate her.
Yeah.
That's
you made that clear.
That's quite a moment. That was something else.
Yeah.
And let's see. I think we had Howie Long on not too long ago, and I thought that was cool because we watched him play football. We've watched him in movies. We've watched him in the pre-games and all. And he was such a big, bold character.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
I thought it was cool when we had him in the studio.
Yeah, I know it was a phone interview, but we got to go to the show, and I know it's all bad now, but you're asking about throughout the history. We didn't know then at the time of some of the things he was doing. But, I mean, if you asked me the question, it would be Bill Cosby for me.
Right.
I mean, that was an icon before I knew all the unfortunate things. That was heartbreaking, but that was somebody that I actually learned storytelling from and was a huge influence from a comedic standpoint on my life and what we do for a living. But I was sad what happened. But if you asked the question on the day that he was on hold, that would have probably been most starstruck for me.
Having President Trump on was cool.
That's big. That's another,
That was big, and he called, and he was funny because he didn't act like everybody else did. That's what was so funny about it. He was just very laid back, straightforward. Troy Aikman being on was great.
Brett
Favre being on. Jewel. Yeah. I've enjoyed, when we go to the golf tournament every year, we've got to have a lot of folks on, and we've had Bo Jackson and Charles Barkley and a lot of other, big sports names that you would know that are household names now, and they've always been a lot of fun.
So what is this third one? Whatever happened to Nope?
I think it is.
Well,
and they want a Nope update.
It's not good.
Well, why don't you explain who Nope is?
So Nope was the woman called in one day wanting us to help her find a lost dog. Now, that's always interesting when you're syndicated and you're in multiple markets, and then now with all the streaming, you could literally be anywhere.
Right.
And somebody wants the show to help them find a dog in their community. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to make a lot of that because I know people.
If it's your dog, it's important.
And,
but to a million other people, they don't care.
Somebody in Baltimore probably is not going to be able to help find Nope, over in Anniston.
Right.
But anyway,
I think it was Homewood, Rick.
Homewood, okay.
Nope was. Yeah.
So that turned into now some people will call this a lack of heart, that we were a little bit heartless because we went for the laugh. So we then began to do a character of the dog and that nobody could find him. I don't know that went over great with the person who called, but with the audience it killed.
Well, Rick, here we are, the last podcast ever of the show, Rick and Bubba University. We're one show away from the last week of the show, and here's somebody asking about Nope.
So it did work as a bit.
Yes, it did.
Yeah,
yes, it did. I will have to say
and probably will appear maybe in Twas the Night Before Christmas.
Yeah, probably so. If I had to guess, Speedy will come up with the most difficult and far-reaching characters he can.
Yeah, and the person who called in who really lost Nope, we can't give you the answer because I think their disdain for the show.
Right.
They never updated us again.
Right.
Because wisely, they would never call the show again.
Rick, as we've had to say with so many things and stories we've told, I think we lost a listener that day.
We did. We certainly did. So it's just been an incredible run. We do want to thank Blaze TV for letting us be part of their family and do this podcast. I want to remind you, if you're not a subscriber to Blaze TV, now's the time to do it, and you can get $30 off. BlazeTV.com/Rick and Bubba gets you $30 off. I think now we learned through, especially the last, say decade we've done the show, independent platforms are becoming more and more important because we're discovering, not just sort of kind of blindly, that journalism is dead. It's all propaganda and agenda. But that's the reason why Blaze TV separated themselves from that by becoming subscriber-based. So if you would like to subscribe, incredible programming available. You get true journalism again. And they do some great mockumentaries. They got some funny stuff, too. So why don't you subscribe now by going to blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba, blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba, get $30 off. So, Bubba, this has been great. Thank you, Blaze TV, for letting us do it. Thanks to all of you out there that have been listening to the podcast.
Yeah,
There's
thank
200
you so much.
Now 223.
And we've been able to do some shows that were serious topics, some that were informative, some like today that were goofy, and we've enjoyed doing them all. We hope you have too.
And thank you so much for supporting us on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.